As you know, there is a projected fetal growth pattern, and there are babies who don't meet that projection. So it can be for various factors, and as you know, IUGR is due to maternal factors like maternal illness like preeclampsia. It can be due to fetal factors, either constitutional small baby, which is the commonest one, and these babies are symmetrically IUGR as well usually, or it can be due to IU infection or chromosomal or genetic abnormalities. So during the in utero period, obviously, if it is a maternal cause, we get impact on the end diastolic flow. So the Doppler velocity is monitored, and the obstetricians will tell us there is absent or reversed end diastolic flow. And we need to correlate with all these factors. How far is growth restriction significant? So they give you the head circumference, abdominal circumference relative ratio. They give you the end diastolic flow, whether it is absent or reversed. So absent end diastolic flow is significant, but reversed is even more significant. And also the duration. So once you see an absent end diastolic flow, it doesn't need, you need to deliver immediately. But if the baby is severe growth restricted and you repeat it and it becomes reversed or it continues to be absent, then you need to look at delivering the baby early. In terms of biophysical profile, that is another tool that the obstetricians use to assess the well-being of the fetus. So where there is absent end diastolic flow, they may use the biophysical profile. The Likert volume is one component of it. If the amniotic fluid is low, then also it is a consideration that you need to watch. In terms of how you approach these babies, there is not much of a difference. Obviously, previously we used to say that the babies with reversed end diastolic flow have less severe RDS, or the babies with IUGR in general have less severe RDS because the IUGR has a protective effect. But in the babies who are very premature, this doesn't hold true. And the babies who are IUGR tend to have more severe RDS, and the outcomes are poorer because of the nutritional factors and other factors as well. In terms of approach to feeding these babies, again, previously we used to hold feeds for a few days before we start, but now we don't hold feeds. We start trophic feeds as early as possible, and we go with the high risk regime. Suppose this baby is 1,500 grams, we would use a regime used for 1,000 grams. You'd still fortify the feeds as you would for a small premature baby, and the rate of increase, again, the high risk regime is 10 to 15 ml per kilo per day increment, while the standard risk is 15 to 30 ml per kilo per day increment. So if the baby is following the high risk regime for a few days and the baby is tolerating well, and the weight is above a certain cutoff, you can go faster with the feeds in the IUGR babies. So the first few days is critical. Umbilical arterial lines, you try to avoid as possible in these babies unless it's essential from the respiratory distress management point of view. So most of us use umbilical arterial lines for the extreme premature babies because these babies need invasive blood pressure monitoring. We also need sampling, which is difficult for the small babies. But in the bigger babies, you try to avoid the UAC. UVC can be used for the first few days if you intend to use TPN, if the weight of the baby is below 1.5 kilo, for example. And the bigger babies, you try to get EBM or you use donor breast milk. One more thing about the IUGR babies is the growth potential for these babies. So it depends on what category of IUGR it is. Asymmetric IUGR is where the onset of the growth restriction started relatively late in the pregnancy. And you need to review the growth pattern with the family, explain to them that these babies are likely to catch up as the baby grows older. And the catch up can happen in the first month to 2 months in some of these babies who feed more, but majority of them, it takes 6 months to 1 year. So you have to warn the parents not to overfeed them, trying to get them to grow faster. In the symmetric IUGR babies, the catch-up growth is less predictable. If it is constitutional growth delay, you know that they will grow as per their projected family growth potential. But if it is symmetrical growth restriction due to genetic factors, karyotype abnormalities, and so on, then they may take on the growth pattern related to that. So they may continue to be small. So it's important that we understand all these aspects when we counsel the families. And the most important thing is to stress not to overfeed them. So I hope this point is clear. I don't remember who asked the question on UGR, but this is in general an overview. I would like to invite your questions at this stage on this topic before we proceed. Any comments or questions on your approach to IUGR? There is no difference. A delayed cord clamping, many of you may be doing it even for the IUGR babies. Unless it's a very severe IUGR, you don't need to hold back. The difference between delayed cord clamping and the risk of polycythemia is in delayed cord clamping, the baby gets the whole blood. It's not just the hematocrit that comes in. And when the volume is more, the hyperviscosity related problems are not as prominent. So even though the baby may have a slightly higher hemoglobin and the risk of jaundice is more, IUGR babies, it's not an absolute contraindication. So you can delayed cord clamp in those babies as well and manage as you would otherwise. Any questions about